Get Rich Education is brought to you by Corporate Direct, Norada Real Estate, and Ridge Lending Group.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education. Thanks for being here. This is episode 97. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, back to help you build your wealth, now in 167 world nations, and we've recently been added to TuneIn Radio, so you can find us now on TuneIn too. Today, we're going to help you learn how to build your wealth with a great guest such that you can make a single family home cash flow $5,000 to $15,000 per month. That's right, that's $5K to $15K, not of monthly income, but of monthly cash flow from one single family home. And it's going to be in a way that you've perhaps never thought of. And if you have thought of this twist on residential buy and hold real estate before, it's likely that you're going to hear more concrete ideas about this than you ever have before here today. And first of all, let me tell you that after today's show, which is sort of mind-blowing enough to try to fathom today's technique, we've got some great shows coming up. We've got Peter Zeihan as a guest. We've got milestone episode 100 coming up in just 3 weeks. And then looking further ahead, a few weeks after episode 100, we've got Rich Dad advisor Tom Wheelwright scheduled to come back here on to Get Rich Education for his record-tying 4th appearance. Also down the road, we've got a very distinguished guest, as he's really quite a famous author, motivational speaker, businessman that's just so renowned for his theories worldwide on wealth and motivation. He is the author of the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and that is the incomparable, renowned T. Harv Eker that's booked to make his debut here with me on Get Rich Education. Gosh, that one is probably going to be fascinating. I really look forward to talking with him, but that's down the road. Let's talk about today. Well, while 13% of Americans are currently age 65 or older, that proportion is going to jump to 18% by 2030. Currently, there are 40 million senior citizens. That number is going to more than double to 89 million by 2050. So with today's guest, we have a real estate investor with 30 years of experience. He's got 4 books and 2 radio shows under his belt. He's a certified financial planner. He's been on the cover of Real Estate Wealth magazine. He's also a master public speaker. In fact, he was just speaking at Harvard University. I first met our guest at a real estate syndication event, and I was last with him on the Real Estate Guys Investor Summit at Sea. Our guest owns the Residential Assisted Living Academy, where he shows you how to generate from one single family home $5,000 to $15,000 of cash flow, not income, but $5,000 to $15,000 of cash flow from one single family home. Welcome to Get Rich Education, Gene Guarino.
Thank you, Keith. What an awesome honor to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So, Gene, why don't you just give us a little bit on your background? You know, I often talk about how doing the right thing is more important than doing things right. And when you have such a wide scope of experience, there's a much better idea that you're going to have that you are indeed doing the right thing. So tell us about starting out.
You got it. When I was 18 years old, I had a business. I was a musician as a teenager, and music school, recording studio, record label, played out professionally. We were renting a building and the landlord was horrible. So in order to go on, continue, we had to buy our own building. So we ended up buying our own building, no money down because I had no money, no credit and so on. And that kind of caught the bug because then from there we did another fix and flip, then a buy and hold, and then a commercial property. And here I am 30 plus years later. And I've done lots and lots of transactions in every front. But right now, even though I've gone through, become a certified financial planner in the US for over 20 years and licensed in Australia for 4, 5, 6 years now, right now I'm doing just one thing, and that's the residential assisted living.
Okay, so you've really been around the real estate investing block, doing it in a number of different ways. What is it the thing that made assisted living facilities so compelling for you? Why that?
When I first heard about it, it was about 15 years ago, and I was first attracted from the business perspective, the concept of taking one home and turning it into such a massive cash flow. But as I got older, and I heard about it maybe, 15 years ago, but it was as my mother was aging, getting into her 80s, and realizing I was now in the position to try to find a place to take care of mom, and I couldn't find what I was looking for, Keith. It was big box facilities that felt like a hotel, 100 yards to get to breakfast. And I realized if I can't find it, there's millions of others that can't. And the more I got into it, the more I realized there's a huge need. So I set a goal, and that goal is to create a home that I'd be proud to have my mom or my dad move into. And I knew if I could do that, there'd be millions of people who would want the same. And I was right.
Yeah, older people and, well, really any people, they don't want to feel like they're living in a hotel or feel like they're living in an institution. But I think really the niche that you found is going ahead and making an assisted living facility feeling like a home by finding a smaller property and making that profitable and making it a livable place for your residents. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because the AARP, which many of us are familiar with, now I'm a member, finally made it. I got my discounts.
Congratulations, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's only 55 now. They lowered the bar to let me in. But the AARP had a survey, and 90% of seniors want to stay in their home for the rest of their life. But home is different things for different folks. But the average person has lived in a single family home in a neighborhood and fairly modest, not like the big McMansions like a lot of us have these days, but fairly modest home, but it's a home. So when they're 85 and all of a sudden they need more help, the concept of moving into what literally could be a converted hotel or apartment complex, or maybe a brand new build, which is still large and impersonal, it just doesn't feel like home. So the concept of taking a single family home, and we typically do keep a little bit larger homes, and we can talk about the specifics of what to look for and where to do it, but a home in a neighborhood where there's no sign in front. It's 24-hour care by caregivers, not myself. I'm involved, but not involved, and we can talk about that. But they're in a home for a group of elderly people. And it might be 10 people, 10 seniors who are in that home, and they might be an average age of 82 years old, where they're in the home and their day-to-day activities and care are being provided for 24/7 by caregivers. And that's the situation. And it's a wonderful opportunity to help people. I call that doing good. And then doing well, I call that making a lot of money. I told you I got into this or originally heard about this, and I was attracted by the money aspect. The older I get, the more I realize really what I'm looking for is significant residual income. I know a lot of people that you work with and are listening to us right now talk about passive income. You write a check and the money comes back to you. This can be that passive, or you can be a little bit more hands-on and make a lot more money. I choose to be a little bit more hands-on, but I am not there day to day. I think I was out to see some of the properties for the first time in a month or 6 weeks the other day, and the rest can be done over the phone, on a computer, and so on. So it's a single family home. It's a group home for seniors. There's 24/7 care, but it's not me providing that care. It's the staff.
Yeah, well, I like that you talk about your involvement level, Gene, because on this show, I talk about how one of the most important investor metrics is often the ROTI. It's not internal rate of return, cap rate, or cash on cash return. It's your return on time invested. That's a big reason that we're doing this. It's to live better lives. So you're really treating this as a business, and you're outsourcing the management and the actual caretaking to someone else, it sounds like. And, let's talk about the real estate component of it a little bit. You talked about going ahead and targeting a larger home when you want to go ahead and identify one of these to potentially own and have someone else operate, but not a McMansion. So tell us a little bit about what makes both an ideal assisted living home size and then a location geographically within a metro.
Perfect. And I'm so glad you said it that way. The location is what I'm going to talk about first, because location, that is the critical point. If it's in the right location, you'll fill the home, even if the home isn't very nice or big or spacious or whatever. So the location is critical. So just to speak to that briefly, you want to be in a location where I'm going to use the term upper middle income. So it's
Okay.
not the cream of the crop, but it's definitely not the bottom of the bottom. There's lots of ways to do this, and I focus on private pay residents, not Medicare and so on. The government, through the federal government, gives money to the states, then the states give it to people that need it within their state based on the guidelines and programs they create. So with seniors, basically, if you are broke with no assets and no income, they'll provide up to a few $1,000s a month to live in a assisted living facility somewhere. The problem is if I have a home with 10 beds and I can only charge $2,000 because that's what Medicare will reimburse me, I'm not going to make nearly as much money as if I charge $4, $5, $6,000 per bed. So that person who's paying private pay, back to the location, where I want to be is where the kids live. And the kids are 50, 60. Their parents are 70, 80, 90. So you want to be in that upper middle income area where the population of people who are 50, 60 years old who have parents, that's where they're going to say, you know, dad needs help, mom needs help. And they're going to move them into a facility, whether it's large or small, a home in my case, that's close to them and convenient for them. So location is critical. The house, what I'm looking for is bigger is better. And don't go overboard, but bigger is better. 300 to 500 square feet per person of home is a good rule of thumb. So when I say that, if you have a 3,000 square foot house, you can have 10 people in there very comfortably. Legally, each state, you could have a much smaller home and you're perfectly legal and fine. You could have a 1,500 square foot home and have 10 people in it. That is way too tight for me, not comfortable, not the product that I want to present, offer, or provide.
Right.
Yeah, so 300 to 500 square feet per person is a good number. Your state, wherever it is that you are, like I'm in Arizona. So in Arizona, we're limited to 10 people in a residential assisted living. In Texas, it's 16. In Florida, it's actually unlimited, only limited by the building code and the municipalities that you're in, and so on. Different states, different numbers, but the house itself, the bigger, the better. Number of bathrooms. You have to have typically a minimum of 2 bathrooms. Some you could potentially do 1, but 2 as a minimum. And again, that's the state minimum. I want to have more. So I'll take big bathrooms and divide them into 2 smaller ones or add half baths as much as I can. So some of the homes that we have are 4,000 square feet with 6 bathrooms, or 4,800 square feet with 7 bathrooms, 6,400 square feet with 11 bathrooms. So you're not typically going to find a home with 11 bathrooms, right? The Brady Bunch doesn't live all over. They're a TV family. That's a joke for anybody who's listening and of age. So the concept of, size, because we can convert space into bedrooms and we can add bathrooms, more difficult, but you can. Single level is preferable, but if you have a multi-story, which they do in a lot of areas of the country, you can do that. You're going to use a stair lift or an elevator if you want them to be on those other levels. If they don't need help getting up and down stairs, you don't need any kind of help. But if you want to have them on the second level, a chair lift, which is relatively inexpensive. You might think you've probably seen those in the movies. They sit down in the chair and it glides up the staircase. That might cost $2,000 on the low end and $5,000 on the high end. Not a bad amount of money to pay once, knowing that the house itself is going to net you, after all expenses, $10,000 a month. So you can do it in multi-stories. Single story is better. Bigger is better. 300 to 500 square feet per resident of living space. The bedroom might be 10 by 12 or 14 by 12, but the home itself has other space besides that. You don't need a commercial kitchen. Grab bars, smooth floors, wide doors. Those are all the things that we're going to end up retrofitting the house for. And we can go as far into those as you want to. But hopefully that was the answer you were looking for.
Yeah, it sure is. I know at times some of these conversions to turn a single family residence into a residential assisted living facility don't need to be drastic. And you talked about a couple of those. In fact, I went through the full 2-day training a few summers ago in my own home state about assisted living home licensing because I was just interested in it enough to want to know more. And, one thing I know, and you touched on a little bit earlier, is, Medicaid does only pay so much. So you really want to attract those private pay residents. So maybe that's a good place for us to turn the corner and just that in what the income is, private pay versus Medicaid, just how much income you can generate and just what a profit and loss statement looks like for an investor on one of these facilities.
Perfect. Great segue. So the average in the country, and we'll just start there, average in the country for a private room and assisted living is $3,600 per month. So $3,600 per month for an average. Some states are less than that. Arizona's lower than that on average. Some states are almost twice that much. Washington, D.C. is more than twice that much for an average home. Keep in mind that in a home, I may have a home with 10 beds. One person is paying $3,000 to live in a shared room, no bathroom. It's a shared bathroom with a bathroom out in the hall. And somebody else is living in the master bedroom with a private suite and a private big, huge bathroom, and they're paying $7,000 a month. So the real estate itself is going to, not everybody pays the same amount because it's also then dependent on their level of care. If somebody doesn't need a lot of care, they're not paying extra for it. If somebody needs a lot of care, they are paying extra. So let's just use the number of 3,600. And I'm going to go average, Keith, because if I do that, everybody else, as we're listening, I teach you not to do average. I want you to do above average when I teach you how to do this and show you how to do this. But if we just use average, 3,600 per person per month, average of 10 beds, because you may have 8, you might have 12 or 16, but let's say 10 makes the math easy. Potential gross income of 36,000. Now, you do need to account for vacancies. We want to be full, but you're going to have a bed or two empty from time to time. So you build in a vacancy rate, and then the expenses. The biggest expense you're going to have is the caregivers, the manager, the people, the humans. So they're not mercenaries. They're not doctors or nurses. They're caregivers. And in Arizona, for instance, they have a certification. It's called a certified caregiver. And Maryland, you have to be a CNA. In Texas, you fog a mirror and you're a caregiver. So it's different throughout the country depending on where you're at, what that caregiver's qualifications are. But it's typically a $10 an hour job. They might get more, they could get less, but it's not a high-paying job. And they're there because they love it. They love taking care of the elderly. This is what they do. It's not about just the money. So the caregivers, 40% is a number that I teach and use as a benchmark. You cannot be paying more than 40% of your gross revenue in labor costs. If you do, you're not going to be making the profit that you should be making.
Good number.
Yeah, so 36,000 would mean we can pay up to and maybe $14,000 in labor.
Yep.
So if I'm paying more than that in labor, that's bad. It's eating into my profit. If I'm paying less than that, that's good. So there are different ways and different models where you can definitely pay less than that. But then the other expenses are the typical expenses that everyone has in your own home. You're paying for the heat, the lights, the electric. You're also paying for the cable TV, your phone, your newspaper. All of those things, the food and so on, are all part of the expenses because it's kind of like being on a cruise ship. When these people move into the home, everything's taken care of for them. Now, on the cruise ship, if you want different food, if you want the high-end beverage package, if you need something else, some service, you want a massage, you're going to pay extra for that. Same thing here. Everything is supplied, but if you want something special or extra, that individual pays for it. So when it all shakes out, and then go to 36, and I'm going to make the math easy. Let's say all of your expenses when it's full is $21,000. Now, the last expense I didn't cover is the real estate. So whether you lease it, whether you own it, I want you to calculate a number, because some people literally make this mistake, and Keith, you probably know this, where they say, well, I bought the house free and clear. I don't owe anybody anything, so it's 100% profit. And I look at that and say, you need to account for your own money. If you paid $300,000, give yourself 6% on your own money, at least as a calculation, because you should be able to get that easy someplace else. So if it's 6%, $18,000 is, money that you're getting back on your money. So if you really think it through, that number itself for the real estate has to be calculated. I always put it in as rent because we'll create a separate entity, one for the real estate, one for the business, one leases from the other. But if I say $5,000 per month in a mortgage payment, debt service, or rent, that's a fairly nice house almost no matter where you live, other than Northern California or Honolulu. But other than that, that's a pretty nice house. So 36,000 potential gross income on the top line minus $21,000. That includes vacancy and maintenance and repairs and all of the other things.
Right. That includes things like food for the residents and such in that expense amount.
Yep. Food for the residents, property taxes, insurance, and all those things, minus another $5,000 for the real estate. That nets you $10,000. So $10,000 per month is an average that is based on my experience, but also the national averages. I'm going to encourage you to have a higher top line. So instead of doing an average home, it's above average. Your expenses go up marginally, but that's a good run through the numbers right there.
Okay, so that's an average of $10,000 of cash flow. And I think I caught that bit that you put in at the end there. If you go ahead and target higher private paying clients, your income can go up substantially, but proportionally, your expenses only go up a small amount to serve that better clientele.
Bingo.
Well, that's great. Well, you know what, Gene? I'm sure this is getting a lot of people's minds running and racing with possibilities and getting pretty excited about how they can do this. But let me just temper that enthusiasm a little bit with, there's probably some other things we need to ask about here, like zoning for the home. Is it okay to put the home in any neighborhood? Or what about licensing? Or what about liability insurance? Tell us about some of those things.
Perfect. So the first thing, zoning. Number one, because of the Fair Housing Act, which is a federal law, they can't say you can't have grandma live in this home. Actually, because of the Fair Housing Act, they can't even limit the number of people that live in a home. But we all know that most municipalities, especially if you're around a university area, they do have a limit to the unrelated adults. They don't want the animal house near the college. But you can have a senior home, a group home for seniors near the college because they can't discriminate against that. Really, the students could sue and they wouldn't be able to hold it either. And now let me jump to the next one, zoning, because I just talked big general picture, zoning. Every state has rules, every county has rules, every city has rules, every community has rules. So once you decide the location, I'm going to do this in Montana. Now you need to pick which part of Montana, which neighborhood. Then you go and you check out the exact zoning in that area. What are the rules? What can I do? What can't I do? Homeowners association. Now we're down to the neighborhood level. If there's a homeowners association, more than likely it says in the CC&Rs, you cannot operate a business out of your home. All right, that means no attorney can work out of their home, no accountant can, no computer programmer can, no cookie baker can. So shut down the whole neighborhood, right? They can't discriminate against you doing this either, but they'll try. So even though I'll win that battle, and we've got students all across the country, I know of homes all across the country that are in neighborhoods with HOAs because they did get through that battle, big or small. My thought is there's a neighborhood across the street without the HOA. Let me just go there. So I'll win the battle, but why have it? So if I can avoid the HOA, I'll do that. Then the next thing is, you mentioned the idea of licensing. The house itself has to be approved and licensed, and that's based on primarily safety and appropriateness. So does it need sprinklers? Does it need smoke detectors? Does it have proper door widths? Does it have grab bars? So safety, and we can go through those in detail. Then the next thing is you need somebody to operate this business. This business itself, most states, there's a license that you do obtain from the state, usually from Department of Health Services. So you fill in paperwork. There is the house that is approved based on its physical nature. And then there is a manager. That manager in different states has different qualifications, but that person who's the manager has to have their license. And to give you the top end and the bottom end, in a number of states in our country, it's a 24-hour course. You literally could do it over a weekend or 3 days. You're trained to be a manager and you get a license for it. In Arizona, we have a lot higher level of gauntlet to get through. It's basically a 2-year process to become a manager. So depending on the state you're in, I'm not a manager. I hire somebody who is the manager. I don't want to be day-to-day in the property. I want somebody else to be doing that. So you need a manager, licensed, whatever that is in your state. The state itself has paperwork and license. Those two things together allow you to operate this business in that neighborhood. I'm going to pause for a second. At this point, some of you are listening and you're saying, oh, there it is. That's the hard part. That's the hard stuff. Good. I want barriers to entry. I don't want everybody to get into this. Anybody can do a fix and flip. Anybody can do a buy and hold. Anybody can buy a note or do storage units and so on. But most people aren't willing to do the work, the extra effort to do what I do. And that's why they're not going to get that 10 grand a month. They're going to settle for $200 a month in positive cash flow. And if you're willing to jump through the hoops, that's it. You're leaving the crowds on the other side. Now you jump through the hoops, you're getting that cash flow, and it gets easier as you go along. First one, you're learning. Second one, you got it down. But the third one, it's a system. So I just wanted people to hear that. I think there was a third one you had in there. Did you mention insurance or liability?
Yeah, liability insurance. What do you do for that?
Cool. There's two parts to it. I kind of mentioned the idea of, I suggest that you have two entities. You always consult with your legal professionals, but one owns the real estate and then one owns and operates the business. So each one of them as a separate entity needs to have insurance. The real estate, the typical slip and fall. I have a rental property. I need insurance in case the postman comes and slips and falls and so on. On the other side, the business needs liability insurance. It's a specific professional liability insurance policy specifically for assisted living. The cost, about $1 a day per resident. So if I got 10 residents, that's a line item of about $300 a month. It's just a line item. It's not medical malpractice. It's not a hospital. There's no doctors and nurses. It's a home. But it's a specific type of insurance to protect us in this business. And that is very important to have. Now, frankly, you don't have to have it, but you really should. My students do. I'm not going to let you do it without it. It's to protect you as much as anybody else. So $1 a day per resident is a good number. It could be less than that. Could be more than that. I haven't heard of that, but that's a cost. It's an element. It protects you. It indemnifies the real estate owner, which in this case is you in another, entity. So that's a good combination to have, and that's how you do the insurance.
Yeah, well, that's something really affordable. Well, when Jade and I come back, we're going to get back into talking about more fun stuff, including how does he find his deals. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is Residential Assisted Living Academy's Gene Guarino. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Cash flow real estate investors, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Did you know that you can finance up to 35 income properties, all with one lender? Ridge Lending Group specializes in investment property loans, and they do it in almost every U.S. state. Ridge has worked with tens of thousands of real estate investors and homeowners all over the country. They've been doing this for investors for so long that at this point, they've helped more families realize their dreams of becoming real estate investors than any other mortgage lender in the country. To find out more, visit ridgelendinggroup.com.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
This is Cashflow Diaries Jay Massey. Do the right thing, then do things right. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education with our guest, Residential Assisted Living Academy's Gene Guarino. So, Gene, I want to talk a little bit about, finding a home and where does one find a deal and what does one look for? Do they look for a deal that's more or less an existing operating, I'll call it a turnkey assisted living facility, or do they look for one that's ripe for conversion? So tell us about finding the deal. I just don't know that this is the type of thing that I see on LoopNet or that I see on Craigslist and so on. So tell us about finding the deal.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because the whole concept of the turnkey can be incredibly attractive in this industry. So let me explain it this way. The best way to get started quickly, if you want to be the owner and or the quote unquote operator of, doesn't mean you're there every day, all day, but is to buy an existing one. So the home exists, the business exists, it's up and running, and God willing, it's profitable. The key there is it the right business to buy? Is it in the right location? If it is, great. And if it's not, pass. So that is one. We do a whole section in our training on how to find those homes, how to find that motivated seller, and then how to know what the value of that is. But the next way, in this way, I think it's a way to get the house you really want, is you decide the location first. And it's always location first. Don't go, I have a great deal. Nope, location first. Once you've chose the location, then we're looking for a home that would be appropriate. Now, frankly, if I have the location, I could scrape the home off and go build it brand new or convert what's there into what I want. Or if it's already 90% there, it's pretty easy to just keep it going to the next level.
Sure. It's just kind of like what we talk about with turnkey property. The market is often more important than the property.
Perfect. Thank you. And then from there, the other option would be to take land, get a plan, build it, design it, start it, grow it. And that's a 1 to 3 year process. So buying somebody else's, you can get up and running within. As soon as you can close, you're up and running. So the idea of buying an existing home and getting it up and running, that process of 6 to 12 months, I think is a very reasonable number. Having said that, you can do it faster than that. I'm trying to be conservative for everybody. I'm going to also say this. I have students all over the country. They come to the training, they learn how to do this, and they say, I just want to buy an existing one. And the ones that are out there that are for sale, You need to find the right one that has the right things wrong. So for those of you that are listening that love the concept of the turnkey, if you're willing to create that and then turn it over to somebody else and let them pay you, let's say a couple of $100,000 for the business that you created and the time and effort you put in, that's a beautiful scenario for those of you that want to just turn those over to somebody else. I will say this, though, that if you're willing to do that, I got buyers for you, no doubt. But why? If you're making 10 grand a month, just be patient. In a year and a half, you got all that money plus, plus, plus for the rest of your life. So, it's up to you as into what you want to do. But man, if you want to do this as a turnkey operation, create them and sell them, there's people out there that want to buy them. The question is, what's the value? Is it worth buying? And so on. If you don't want to sell it because you want to keep the cash flow, I think that's a smart idea, but totally up to you.
Now, just going through the class here in my own state, I've learned that some people make a sort of conversion. For example, a ranch home, which is a one-story home, is often desirable for these sorts of places, but oftentimes there are more two-story properties on the market. So what I've seen some people do when I've talked to them is they go ahead and buy a two-story place, and when they convert it to an assisted living home, they keep the second story up there, but what they do is they expand the first story. So now they have all the residents on the first story, and they just have the caregivers live in what is now a smaller upstairs than the downstairs is. And I found that to be one very feasible way for some to do it.
Absolutely. I've got a partner in Colorado that that's what he does is just his model. He'll find the right location, and it's typically your normal 3-bed, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot home, but he'll put a 2,000 square foot addition on the first floor. In that way, it's designed exactly the way he wants. You've got all the square footage you want. It's all on one level. Or just do the chairlift or the elevator to the second level. By the way, Keith, I wanted to ask, you said you went to a training in your state. Is that one of the trainings that is given by the state itself?
It was given by the state of Alaska, yes.
Yeah, so I just want people to hear that because most states may have some kind of a training program. And really what it's all about in that training program is what is this business, how to operate it as the administrator, caregiver, and so on, and what are the rules, the regulations of the do's and don'ts. It's really not from the business perspective.
Right.
Yeah, what I teach is the business part. How do you do this as a business to make money? Do you want to be the real estate investor or do you want to be the business owner? I don't teach here's how you pass meds. Here's how you make spaghetti for a group of 10. That's not what I do. That should be the caregivers and the managers. They should go to those courses and they're the ones who are going to follow those rules. Now, you and I, Keith, as the owner, it's fine for us to go to those classes because I want to know what the manager and the caregivers are supposed to be doing. But I just don't want people to say, okay, I'm going to go learn how to be a caregiver. No. Be involved, but not involved.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to know what others should know more so than what I should know. So yeah, going to the state class, right, it was more about regulations. And, they hardly even brought up or mentioned the cash flow. And I think you're going to tell us a lot more about that at your academy. So, well, when it does come to one acquiring this or getting into this, I know I've got some listeners that we got to be interested in doing this. There's just so many ways to do it. You could purchase one that's kind of already turnkey and done for you, or you could convert your existing one and make that a turnkey one and sell it to somebody else or have somebody else operate it and collect the rent. Or you can also buy an existing property yourself, go ahead and convert that and want to operate it yourself. So with all these different situations, it all brings up one big question, no matter what that situation is, and that is financing. What does it look like for getting loans for these scenarios?
That's great. So here's the thing. We just had in our presentation a gentleman come in from SBA who was telling us all the rules and regulations on SBA, and they are more willing than ever to be making loans on all kinds of things, and especially assisted living, because it is very viable. It's needed. It's literally a crisis in our country, so it is needed. So let's go from top to bottom. It's residential, not commercial. So that's the first thing. It's a residential property. If you're going to buy the property, then convert it, get it licensed, and so on, it's a residential loan. You could buy the home, move into the home, and convert it around you, and it's owner-occupied residential. You could buy the home and convert it so it's non-owner occupied. It's a rental property, but it's residential. So everybody knows what the rules are for that. It is what it is. Now, if you want to finance some of the renovation, You're not typically adding on space. So I'm going to put on a two-car garage or I'm going to put on a 2,000 square foot addition. If you do that, then it's fairly easy to get construction loans through a normal bank for a residential property for that. But if it's different, if it's interior work that you're reconfiguring the inside that doesn't necessarily add to the, value of the home from that perspective on a resale, it's to retrofit it for your use. Getting a loan for that construction, that would be harder. So you have bank loans. SBA is a government guaranteed bank loan. And that program itself, you could finance 90% of the real estate and 75% of the business. So if you're potentially buying somebody else's business, it exists today. SBA is a great way to go because you can finance most of the real estate and a good chunk of the business itself. And they'll even let you do owner financing on most of the balance of that. They want to see that you have some skin in the game, but as long as they're covered, they're covered. So SBA, residential. Now, private lenders is what I like to focus on. So there's two types, or really three. Well, let's talk first of just a private lender that does it as a business. You might call them a hard money lender, but those are short term. There's private lenders that do it professionally where they just want their money to work for them, and they're interested in getting a solid rate of return backed by a secure asset, real estate. And you may be paying them 6-8%, maybe 10% if you have to on the riskier money, the second mortgage on the business itself. But private lenders are a lot easier to deal with. As long as you have a proper business plan and you know what you're doing and so on, they get it, they understand it, and they're not raking you through the coals to get a yes. So I like private lenders and investors. That's what I primarily focus on. You have everything from IRAs, self-directed IRAs, 401ks. You can work with either your own money or other people's money. Different topic on the financing aspect. But it's residential, not commercial. There are government loans, there's bank loans, there's private lenders, there's joint ventures with partners that you can bring people in. I guarantee you, those of you listening, if you start to discuss this with other people that you know, saying, hey, I'm thinking about getting into senior housing in a residential setting, they're going to say, tell me more. There's so many people that I meet that want to get into this game, but they're not willing to take the action to do the work. They just want to write a check and get involved. So finding money for this is the easiest thing I've ever done, period. So the last piece is syndication. You literally could put together the syndication and raise as much money as you want from people who just want to get involved, write a check, and be totally passive. And they're going to get a nice rate of return while you put the project together with none of your own money, very typically. And you're getting a good chunk of the profits and proceeds, but you're the one who's putting together the project, so you deserve it. So that's kind of a long answer, and there's a lot of tentacles and details in there, but take it from there.
Yeah, I think it probably would be pretty easy for an investor to raise money for one of these deals because to me, it seems like anymore, Gene, it's pretty common knowledge that senior citizens are a fast-growing demographic, and I just think a lot of people believe that. So it would be pretty easy to raise capital. So, once we have our financing in place, once we've got our plan, once we're going to close on our assisted living home, oftentimes that home might not be an occupied one if it's not already an existing business. And I know from just being around this a little bit that it can be really difficult if you have a completely empty home to get that first resident in there. Once that first domino falls, it can often be easier to fill up a home. So tell us about getting a home occupied.
Wow, you hit the nail on the head. Priming the pump, as I call it. So the first resident, I've had the situation where you open the home and people walk in and go, it's a beautiful home, but there's nobody here. So psychologically, what that is what's wrong, right? Even though they know it's brand new and you just opened the doors, what's wrong? How come nobody else is here? So on the other hand, if it is just one or two or three people in the home, they're like, it's beautiful, but there's only a few people. So now here's a word that you'll hear. I really can't get a feel for the culture of the house yet.
Right.
Because is it men? Is it women? Are they old? Are they indigent? Are they in wheelchairs? Are they active? So I get that. But priming the pump, getting them there. The first home, it's always that, how do you get that first person in? So I'll just give you two ways of doing it. We had an open house at one of our homes that we opened where the open house was on a Thursday. And if you do it properly, you'll have 60, 80 people at your open house that are potential referral sources. And on Tuesday, we had our first resident move in. So Thursday open house, Tuesday resident moves in. Within 2 months, the home was full. On the other hand, there's another home where we opened it And what we did was we had another home nearby. So we approached some of the residents in the home that was full and said, look, we just opened a new home over here. We're looking for a resident or two to move over there. We're willing to give you a spiff, maybe keep your rate the same, even though the rate over there is higher than, but we're looking for one or two people. And you find that person whose family is like, yes, that's closer to me and I'd love to do that, and so on. So then you bring them over to the house. You've got your first resident, and it is a lot easier. The first one's the hardest. Second, third, fourth, easier. But then at that point, you've got the momentum, and then it fills very quickly at that point because people are like, I got to get in before it's full.
Yeah. Now, as far as getting that first resident in there and developing a culture, I'm pretty sure I've got some listeners right now, Gene, that are a husband and wife,
Mm-hmm.
and they're thinking, hey, our kids have grown. They've flown the coop. They're gone. They're in college. We've got an empty nest now. And we've got these extra bedrooms that aren't being used by our children that have left the nest. So we can go ahead and start renting out rooms in our own home to residents, to senior citizens. I'm going to guess that you're going to suggest against something like that because, I've heard about how, basically husband and wives get sort of trapped in their home. They try to be the caregivers, and pretty soon they find out that they can't go anywhere and the business owns them. They don't own the business. Tell us about that. What do you think?
You are spot on. That's what I think. That is the model that you just described is probably 90% of the residential group homes that are out there.
Not surprised.
Yeah, kids moved out. They move some seniors in, make a little extra food, do a little extra laundry. Before you know it, they are trapped in their own home and they can't get out. And also, they did it in such a way where it's a regular home. There's 3-4 bedrooms. So they moved in 4 or 5 seniors, but that's all the room they have. They're only licensed for 5. So if I, as a business owner, come in and say, okay, I want to make money, so I need to replace that live-in homeowner as a manager and caregivers, I have to hire people, but I've only got half the income that I could have. So it doesn't become a viable business. It's a business where if you sell it to somebody else, they're basically buying a job. So I'm going to definitely encourage you, as you said, Keith, and you were spot on, not to do that. Don't do that. Now, I know that some of you, it may fit your situation saying, but I love these people. I would love to do that. That's where my heart is at. Awesome. I mean, hey, let's face it. If you had 4 people paying you $5,000 a piece, that $20,000 a month, if they're in your own home and you're the caregiver, you could hire people to take care of them for a little bit. You got plenty of money for food. You're living for free and making good money. And that is what a lot of people do, 90%. I do it as a business, and I want to encourage you to. I'd rather you spend your time working on the business, not in the business. Be a part of the management team, and you're at the top of that pinnacle where you're the business manager and you own 3 of these homes. So you have a management team that does all of that other stuff, so you can be on a cruise with the real estate guys.
That's living well.
I got to tell you, every time I go on that cruise, I'm always like, I don't want to pay for the phone package and I don't want to be bothered by the internet. But when I come home, the homes are better than when I left. And that's when you know that you own the business and it doesn't own you.
Yeah, boy, that's when you know. Yeah, that's really fantastic. Well, Gene, a lot of the importance here, one thing I talk about is living well and giving well. And we really have the opportunity to do both with an assisted living facility. And, that comes down to what we're really trying to do here. We're trying to serve and care for people. And part of that serving and caring for people, we ought to just touch on it real quick. What does a manager actually do in an assisted living home?
I'm going to address that, but first, you just brought up something that I think is really important to address, the concept of, do well and make money, but help other people. And I want everybody to just get internal a little bit here and just get a little bit real with yourself. Where are you going to go? What's your plan?
Right.
Where are you going to move? Because, Keith, you're a young guy. You're 40, 50 years out from needing that help. I'm 30 years out. But a lot of people listening might be 10 years out or even 15 years out. And here's the point. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have long-term care insurance, which 90% of us do not, then what's your plan? I'll tell you what's going to happen. If you don't get one of these homes for yourself now, what's going to happen is your estate will be liquidated to pay for your care for the rest of your life. Or after that's gone, or if you don't want to do that, who's going to pay for it? It's going to be your kids. So if you got 3, 4, 5 kids, guess what? They're all going to be ponying up $1,000 each out of their money, their retirement account, their kids' college fund, just to pay for you because you weren't prepared. So if nothing else, do one of these homes to make money now, and then you have a place to move to when it's your time. Live for free in the master bedroom. So, little aside, the manager, what do? When I first got started, I wanted to find a manager that could be everything. So everything from the business right down to the cleaning the dishes, not literally, but you get the point.
Right.
What I found is that everybody has different skill sets. So the manager that I found is awesome, but is really highest and best use. The right place for him on the bus is the people part, the residents, the caregivers, the residents, the family. Those are the people that he needs to take care of. And that's where his heart's at. When it comes to the business side, collecting the money, paying the bills, the details, definitely not his forte. Now, I've traveled all over the world, Keith, teaching hundreds of thousands of people how to do business. And here I was trying to have somebody else do the business part for me. And I quickly realized, number one, he's not the guy. And number two, I shouldn't do that. It's my business. I'll take care of the business side. You do your part. So that manager in my case is in charge of keeping the house. Well, let's start with getting the staff. So that picking them, choosing them, training them, maintaining, and so on, the caregivers. Making sure that the house is full, so getting residents, keeping residents, taking care of all of their records and needs, dealing with the families of the residents, which is as important, if not more important, than the residence itself. And those are the things that he does. And I do the business side. But he's there every day, and I'm there once a month.
That's terrific. That's the way it ought to be. That's the sign that you've got a real business there. And, I think one important thing for me to say is I did go to my state class, which is really more about the regulations. And I think you should go to that class. But if you only go to that class, you're just going to have your mind cluttered with all this regulatory drudgery and all that. And, I think it's just important for you, the listener, to remember, you don't need to be the one responsible yourself for maintaining the records for administering medication to an 88-year-old woman that's in your facility. So go ahead and take the state regulatory class. But Gene runs the Residential Assisted Living Academy, and he approaches it more from the perspective of a business. So, Gene, tell us a little bit more about your academy, and please give out your website.
Oh, thank you. And you're absolutely right. And I do encourage you to go to the class too, but be careful who you listen to. I mean, I've had students literally go to these classes, and the first thing the teacher, the trainer gets up and says, if you're in this for the money, get out of this business. It's like, hey, excuse me?
They said that in my class.
Yeah, see that? And see, that's a social worker mindset. Nothing wrong with that. But the point is, it's a three-legged stool. And if you don't take care of the business, I can't hire caregivers and I can't take care of the residents. So you have to have all of them. We need residents, we need staff, caregivers, manager, and we need to know the business. So if you're there in a class listening to the wrong person, they'll dissuade you from even getting started. So careful of who you're listening to. The reason why we started the training class, Keith, is that as soon as I did this, people were asking me, can you teach me? Can you show me? Will you help me do this? So fairly right from the very beginning, I was already teaching people how to. Now, I'm a teacher by nature, done it for decades and trained hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm really good at training people and encouraging people and getting them to where they want to be. So we started doing the class, and we have two forms, and the best way is what we call the 3-day fast track. You come to our state, our homes, you see it from the inside out. Because I can give you a DVD and you can listen to and watch and listen to other people, but until you touch it, feel it, smell it, getting the context, get in a bus, come see my homes, meet the manager, the caregivers, the resident, that's the aha moment. So we do that in a 3-day format because I can teach you everything you need to know in that 3 days fast track so that you can start doing it immediately. And that class itself is held in Arizona. If you're interested in that or the online version, that's the second best way. You can visit our website for more information, ralacademy.com. So residential assisted living, ralacademy.com.
Yeah, if you have any interest in doing this, I really recommend Gene's resources. To me, he is the highest known resource in this type of training of anybody that I possibly know. And I don't have any sort of arrangement with Gene, like I get some income if you attend his academy or something like that. That's probably something I ought to say more often. I just know that he's got resources that can really help you if you have any interest in that. So I really suggest checking that out. Gene Guarino, thanks so much for coming on to Get Rich Education today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. And if you want me back, just let me know and we'll go deeper.
That sounds great. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Well, yeah, some great content there. Don't you just love listening to Gene? He's got all the answers, and he's got this great radio voice that he delivers this in as well. Oh, there's just so much to comment on there. I thought it was interesting that he talked about how you want to go ahead and select your home's location. Oftentimes it's based on where the children live, not so much where the residents live. That's kind of a special twist on how we usually think of residential real estate investing, rather than thinking about the residents and their jobs and all that. It's a location often based on the children of those residents. And yeah, it just kind of gets some special perspective on this. And gosh, frankly, I kind of think about how lucky I really am to have a grandmother that still lives in her own home and isn't even in one of these facilities yet. But, you know, no matter where we are in life, we're all going to end up here someday. So it's definitely worth thinking about residential assisted living homes. Again, Gene's website is ralacademy.com. Thanks to today's guest, the talented Gene Guarino. And as always, thanks to GRE's business developers, the inimitable John Collins, Marcus Whalen, sound engineer Vidran Jampo, and GetRichEducation.com's web designer Nikon Roy. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. We'll see you next week. Don't follow money, make money follow you. And though you might quit your day job, don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.